I don't
How
even know
about
what your
this?
number is to do it,
Real
bro.
Talk Radio. Real Talk Radio. Plant seed and water seed.
David, not ready.
Welcome to Real Talk Radio, the show that says just because you do not attend with them doesn't mean that you're not in him. The him being Jesus, the show that plants seeds and water seeds, but God gives the increase. Let's talk about it on Real Talk Radio. This show is a continuation of the Church Folk Revolution. Enjoy the show.
Welcome,
me?
one and all, to another
Hold on, bro.
episode of
Hold
Real.
on. Time out, bro. Hold on. Time out. What happened? Because
What you mean?
pre-show, we had a conversation, like,
Oh, my bad. Go ahead, you got it.
the door, waving the phone. Nah, bro, I'm going to fall back, man. I'm going to fall back.
No, I'm falling back. I'm off.
No.
I'm off that horse. You got it.
For Lent.
I'm going on mute.
I'm good.
I'm on
I'm done.
mute. I'm on mute.
That beginning of the show
y'all,
was
dead air.
incredibly awkward silence that, that actually at all. Man, listen, if you've never listened to this show before, every time we start the show, there's some sort of comedic, whether it be Nathan's whack WKRP introduction to the show. A joke that takes place. And this is the same thing that's happening this morning. We thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk Radio, the show that says just because you do not mean that you're that'll be Jesus. I guess everybody just went on mute first thing this morning. I know the homie Rob is not feeling well this morning. He a little bit, but we trying to push forward with this show. Nathan, come through, bro.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk Radio. The show that says just because you don't attend with them does not mean that you're not in him. The him being who? Jesus. Jesus showed the plant seeds and water seeds. But God gets the increase. Today on Real Talk Radio, we will be talking about religion and politics, or politics and religion, and we're going to hit this show from different angles today because there's a lot to talk about when we talk about religion and politics, how your religion affects your political views. And so without any further ado, we're going to let all the other fellas jump in, chime in, and give their point of view before we really hit it. So, Rob, what you got to say, brother?
Come on, son, with the Robitussin, son.
Oh, he's sick, ain't he? He's sick. John, what you got to say?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very interesting topic, talking about, and it's going to go in a variety of directions. Speaking about not just the black church, but really Christians in general, but how politics and religion, how they've gone hand in hand throughout the years, and we're going to tackle some of those issues and look at them from different angles and stuff.
Andre, you here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just a little busy, but as far as the topic of the show is concerned, religion and politics, we're going to show exactly how, in some cases, religion actually influenced politics. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you're white or black. You know what I'm saying? Tune in for the show.
Mm-hmm.
LL.
Okay, anybody else here?
LL, what's your thoughts? Did we lose him?
I don't know, man, but it
All
seems.
right.
Can you hear me? Because it seems to be,
Yeah.
Blog Talk then gave up being
I can
able
hear
to
you.
do the right thing for Lent because I'm struggling with this joint.
Yeah, I think Jonathan got hung up on, LL got hung up on. I think it's just me, you, and Dre right now.
Okay. Well, bless God. They'll call back in. But I didn't give. Let me give the topic that is incredibly deep and multi-layered, man. It's not as nearly as simple as saying there should be a separation of church and state. There's so many different levels to this. Many people confuse what a Republican is, what a Democrat is, what a conservative is, what a liberal. There are many people who believe that God is calling America back to being the chosen nation. There are many people who are trying to put particular candidates in office as a way of making sure there's a quote-unquote Christian in the White House, which is incredibly subjective now, we know. There's many different layers to this. So, man, I think this is going to be a great show, one that I can't wait for callers to share their perspective. And callers, that number is 661-449-9951. John, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, and one of the things that you brought up, you were saying like how we're supposed to be getting back to politics. I'm not sure if that's the exact phrase that you used, but our very first show together, when we first joined you on Real Talk Radio, we did a show called Dominionism. And Dominionism, really their basic thought process or their basic belief is that Jesus will not return until his people subdue the earth. And they want to do it through seven mountains, I guess you're supposed to say. So we're supposed to take charge and be in charge of everything. So they want to put people in power through politics, putting Christians in the White House and putting Christians in all these elected places, basically trying to make it a theocracy. Like in my mind, it's no different than like a Muslim ruled countries, but they want a Christian ruled country. They want to take over not just the country but the whole world. Jonathan, what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think they want it to be a theocracy, just like it was with Israel and all that stuff.
What is a theocracy, though?
Right now in America, we live in a so-called democracy. You have a dictatorship, and a theocracy is where God rules. So I guess the leaders would be clergy, apostles, prophets, all those folks. And they want to run it. They want to be in charge. And that's what a theocracy is. Like if you read through the Bible, Israelites, they were ruled by a theocracy, where the clergy was in charge. I think at some points they were theocracy, and at some point in history they were a dictatorship because they did have kings, but God wanted them to be a theocracy. Rob, you back?
Rob was never here. He's not going to be on the show today.
Oh, okay. That's right. He's sick. That's right.
Yeah, he's not feeling well, man. He's a little under the weather, bro.
Y'all pray his strength in the Lord.
So let's dive on in it. Let's dive on in. Go ahead, Elgin.
Well, the difficult aspect of this topic, man, well, not even difficult. Let's give some background. We know currently we have two incredibly polarized candidates. I'm not really including Bernie Sanders in this conversation. That's not to somehow think he's not relevant, but these other two candidates, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, seem to be the front runners for their particular parties. With that being said, most people have seen on many different levels different quote-unquote Christians backing these particular candidates. Just the other day, we had Paula White come out in support of Donald Trump. And in that same statement, she also mentioned that Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham, has called Donald Trump a great leader. You've seen tons and tons of black preachers come and support, and I'm using black preachers specifically for make a point here. So it's not just exclusively to the black church, but you see tons of black pastors come out and support Hillary Clinton. Now, remember some months ago that you had 100 black pastors come together before Donald Trump even got on the road that he's headed, come and prayed and met with Donald Trump and laid hands and prayed upon him. Now, the reason why this is incredibly significant is these quote-unquote pastors have a huge presence with their congregants' life. We know the way the institutionalized church is set up is that the pastor is the chief influence, unfortunately, of the people in the church. People in the church will not make decisions without consulting their pastor. The pastor will be the one who leads them down a road. So the pastor, particularly a big market, big mega church pastor, comes through and makes a statement about Donald Trump, 9 times out of 10, the people within that congregation are going to vote that way. So there's a huge dynamic here when it comes to this, and you've had tons of battles breaking out, different this year than I think we've seen in years past because of the current racial climate in our country. Racial tensions are incredibly high. There's tons of issues in regards to that. So then when you have somebody come out who's black that says they're a Republican, their blackness is called in question. They say they're a Democrat, and then the fact that their knowledge is called in question. It's so many different layers to this thing. But I think the one thing is that I'm really unsure about how to deal with is what is a Christian's role and responsibility in this situation? How should we respond? Should we fall back? Should we not be involved? What do we do? And I think the fact that we're having this discussion, because we're not looking to tell any of you people who are listening, whether now or in the archives, who to vote for or to vote. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to create an opportunity for everyone to have a healthy dialogue. So I think, fellas, let's kind of, what are some of your thoughts and some of the things that you've seen in regards to Christians in this political scene right now?
For me, and this is Nathan speaking, I think it depends on what type of church you belong to. And that type of church you belong to will and does oftentimes shape and mold your political views. If you are in a predominantly black church, more than likely you will be voting for Hillary. If you are in a predominantly white or evangelical church, like Franklin Graham's type of church, or Rick Warren or one of them types of church, you may be voting for Donald Trump. And I think it's just because it's just the environment that you're in. If you are a black person in a predominantly white church, it's hard to say. I don't know. But your views may be swayed by the environment that you're in. So you may be voting for Donald Trump. Now, and vice versa. And this is not to say that everybody will vote that way. Just because you're in a black church, you're going to vote for Hillary. And I'm not saying that at all. So please do not misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I'm generally speaking. And this is from my from what I've seen, from what I've heard. I don't see, and you had a few of the Donald Trump, remember when he had all those black preachers there?
Yeah.
They all went, but I think that was more so for money. They thought they were going to get some money from Donald Trump, but I don't think they're really telling their parishioners to vote for Donald Trump. And I can't say what they're telling parishioners because I'm not in their church or in their congregation. But this is just from my perceptions. So, I'm speaking from my perceptions, not from a place of authority because I can't really speak what people are saying or why people vote the way they vote. But I do think that the religion or what congregation you're in plays a big role in it.
Mm-hmm. And for me, we've noticed, and it's no big secret, that black folk have, in general, voted Democrat for I don't know how long. For the longest, they voted Democrat, and it's like and the Republicans pretty much know that, so they don't feel the need to even reach out to try to get any black votes. And the bad thing about that is, it's like, well, the Democrats pretty much know, well, we got the black vote, so we only do a little bit to pander, but, you know, it's like they don't have to do anything to earn our vote. They don't do anything to earn it. They just think that they got it, like they take it for granted. And we generally just give it to them. And like you said, we speaking in general terms here. But I was wondering, why do you guys think that the blacks vote Democratic the majority of the time?
I think personally it's twofold. I think it's a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, also known as ignorance to history, what the Democratic Party is, what it was, and the impact that it still has based off of its history. And I also think there's another side to it. I think that for many well-meaning black folk, there are a misconception that everyone who is Republican is somehow white. And I'm not even speaking of skin color white. I'm talking about whiteness, and that means a perspective, a viewpoint, a mentality. So even when you are a black Republican, your blackness, for lack of a better term, is called into question. You're challenged. You're viewed as so many derogatory and oftentimes completely inaccurate terms. So it's definitely a lack of knowledge and this inherent perception that Republican is white and Democrats is black. So you've got to always, vote Democrat because you got to keep the Republicans in office. And I think that shows a deeper-seated issue within our community, that there is an engraved distrust for white folks who are in power.
And I also believe I also believe that one reason why people vote the way that they do is because it's inherited to them. In other words, if my mama was a Republican, if my great-grandmama or great-granddaddy was a Republican, then more likely than not, I'm going to be voting Republican too. This is a Republican household. And so we're going to be voting Republican. Same thing with Democrats. JFK was a Democrat. So, we love what JFK did and we love what Democrats did after JFK. We've always voted Democratic, and so now I'm going to vote Democratic as well. That's one of the reasons why I voted Democratic, because my family was Democratic as well. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of times it's also handed down through the generations as well.
And one other aspect I want to throw in there too is it's not so much as people being pro-democratic as it is being anti-Republican, because of the racial animus towards the Republican Party, or that we see coming out of the rhetoric that comes out of there, these undertones and these different words that they try to use. And we know what they want to say, but they're trying to use words to try to be politically correct. But we know what these words really mean. But because they are perceived as the racist party, so it's like, okay, we don't have a choice, but so in order to defeat them, I'm going to go with these guys. So it's like, well, let's just take the lesser of two evils, but you're still taking evil.
And I think the problem with all that is, and we put it in that context for people to get a foundational understanding of why blacks in general tend to vote Democrat. Now, here's the piece that ties into the topic of the show. Within our community, the black church is still incredibly influential in getting people to think a certain way and to do a certain thing, particularly as Dre tied in, the older generation there's in most churches within black society, black communities, there is a large number oftentimes of an older generation, and there's a decent number of younger generation. What they don't have is that middle section, that 25 to 35 section. That's often missing. So what you have is you have an older generation who are connected to the civil rights generation, the civil rights movement, who have seen people fight and die and do all types of things in order for people to be able to express their freedom to vote. This whole notion that people have actually given their life for someone to vote, it's got to be very difficult with that language. Do I think people have been killed trying to vote? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no denying that. So that type of thing has had a huge impact on those older civil rights generation of people within the black church, which has influenced that younger generation. So when you hear somebody like me, for instance, come through and say voting in black society has had very little positive impact for change in our community, the older generation are immediately going to meet that with a level of vitriol and frustration and anger using that logic. Don't you know people have been beat, killed, raped, blah, 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 all those type of things, so you can have the freedom to vote? So now I'm looked at as being, a traitor or not appreciative or all these negative things. So within the church setting, the political aspect is very, very important. But what the problem is, there's not enough education being taught to that younger generation who has no understanding what the Electoral College is. Understand that the Electoral College is actually who puts the president in office, not your popular votes. Don't understand that. They don't understand the history behind the Democrats and the Republicans about what they actually stand for. They can tell you that they're voting for Hillary, but they have no idea what Hillary stands for, or Hillary's history of voting, her voting history. They can't tell you anything about Donald Trump's foreign policy. They can tell you that Donald Trump is a racist and wants to put up a wall in America between Mexico and America, but they can't tell you where Donald Trump stands on raising taxes for your school systems locally. They can't give you that information. But they can say, I'm not voting for Donald Trump because he's a racist Republican. Or I'm voting for Hillary because we liked Bill when he was in office. Without understanding what Bill did when he was in office, that is very incredibly detrimental to black folks. And then from a white perspective, white folks tend to vote for their collective personal interests. They tend to make sure they want to put somebody in office who is going to maintain their status and maintain the situation that they're in. It's very difficult to gauge, but then when people start putting Jesus in it, that's where I begin to have an issue and a red flag picks up, for me, comes up. Like, well, God told me, or God, we prayed, and, it's like, I think John said it the other day, if the Republicans is praying to God to win and the Democrats is praying to God to win, who is God going to answer? Like, how does that work? I think it's a phenomenal discussion.
That's the same thing when people pray about the Super Bowl. I'm praying for my team to win. You pray for your team to win. Will people be praying to the same God?
And I think that's so important to bring up, because you have people who will swear up and down that God is on their side. He answers their prayers. And when their candidate doesn't get elected, now they're, maybe we didn't pray hard enough. We didn't pray long enough. Maybe somebody who prayed with us, there was some sin in the camp. And it leads to all these excuses and reasons why. But Scripture says that God sets up. As He will. He puts in power, and He sets up and takes down. I'll find that Scripture. I will find it. Unless somebody knows where it is. But God does that. God sets up kings. Not us, not through our prayers, who God will. And most of the times we get the president that we deserve. We get the leader that we deserve because of some of the stuff that we've done in this country. We get who we deserve. The people of Israel, they wanted a king. God didn't want him, but they gave him a king because God gave him a king. And when I say that your religion influences your politics, because as we said, I think Andre said, a lot of stuff is inherited and passed down from our parents and grandparents and things like that. Why we vote the way we voted. I voted Democrat forever just because, and as Elder said, I was uneducated in the voting process, but that's what all my peers were doing. That's what everybody around me was doing, voting Democrat. So I just voted Democrat, went with the flow until I got to church, started listening, and y'all better not try to string me up, but I voted for George W. Bush twice.
Why?
And here's why. Because of his stance on abortion, on gay marriage, and it was one more thing. His gay marriage, abortion was one more thing. And that's why I voted for him. That was the only reason I voted for him. That was it. The only reason. His stance on abortion and gay marriage. Twice.
Absolutely fascinating. Fascinating, man. Because I did the same thing. I didn't vote for President Obama because of his stances on those issues. Now, I want people to understand, this is when we were knee-deep in church, when my mad church disease was, at its highest level. I'm trying to vote according to my Christian, quote-unquote, principles. I'm trying to put somebody in office that Jesus is going to be pleased with. So that was one of the things that I was looking for. Like, I want to know, I really wasn't caring about, what you were going to do for my hood. I wasn't caring about what you were going to do with taxes. I wanted to know what your faith was like. Like, ooh, I need that. So even to the point where, remember when Mitt Romney came out, how Mitt Romney came out, and when Mitt Romney was giving, stuff that was possibly going to be very beneficial for the country. But when his faith came out, you had all these evangelical Christians began to say, well, Mitt Romney is a part of a cult. You're going to put a cult leader in office. But you know how they began to question President Obama by saying he was a Muslim. Oh, you're putting a Muslim in office. Don't for 1 second take into consideration or a lack of consideration how people will use religion as a way of trying to sway people to vote a certain way. That abortion and homosexual marriage was a hot button, it still kind of is, hot button topic. So when you hear those things come up, it makes you say, if I'm going to vote for someone who's in favor of abortion, now I'm in favor of abortion. There's this type of guilt by association, man, thing that is going on that just makes us look really, really uneducated, that you're going to not vote for a person based off of one or two things that you disagree with. And I'm not telling anybody how to vote or what you should vote for or what you're convinced you should be, but I think there has to be a level of understanding all the way across the board.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to bring up another issue. The word conservative, and we know that by and large, black people are, we want to say conservative. But when we hear that word conservative, our mind automatically jumps to Republican Party and what they consider conservative. Because we all have conservative views on certain things. And back when I was in church, I used to call myself a conservative liberal, really a moderate. So what do you guys think about this word conservative, and can black people be quote-unquote conservative?
I think for the most part, and I want Nathan to be able to chime in too also, is the fact of when I hear, or when I was younger, in my lack of knowledge type of days, there was this understanding or this thought process, perception, that conservative was the equivalent of Republican, meaning there was a level of whiteness to conservative. Now, I want people to understand that race plays a huge factor in how people vote outside of this notion of racial issues. It's very ingrained in our communities of how we vote in that manner. But I want people to begin to think that conservative often means, for many people still today, it means white. It means having a anti-black view. Okay? It means something completely different than what it actually means, because most people within black society have conservative type views. Listen, man, I'm not big on doing this, but I need one of you brothers, man, to actually check your microphones, because somebody's mic is incredibly loud and it's really, really disruptive. Okay, somebody took care of it. I appreciate that. But the conservative aspect is huge within this ingrained thinking within our community. So conservative usually means white. Liberal usually means for black or pro-black. But to be honest with you, most people within black society have incredibly conservative views. They want better schools in their community. They want structure to allow them to not only be successful, but to keep their success. To the stuff that we believe in black society goes countercultural to liberal thought process. But again, those terms in our community have not been properly defined and regulated to substantiate what they're actually meant to be. Nathan, what do you think, bro?
I think we live in a world of sound bites, and especially today with how social media is, how, and everything, and people just believe a lot of stuff that they see on TV. And a big issue is that people just don't read. They don't take the time to study anything. What's popular, what's hot, what's happening, what's hot nowadays, and that's what they go with. They go with the flow, because to go against it means to be faced with a lot of criticism, unwanted criticism, and a lot of times unwarranted criticism. So if you say you're a conservative and you're a black person, people will automatically lump you into this category without even taking the time to have a conversation with you to see what you really believe and why you believe that. Because you may be conservative when it comes to guns or something like that, but you might not be conservative when it comes to food stamps. So, you really have to sit down and have a conversation with somebody, and we just throw terms out there. And I think for people to have honest dialogue where people can come to understand each other, before you start that dialogue, I think there should be a defining of terms. So when we say something, I understand what you're saying. And it's just not in religion, politics, but even when it comes to religion, like when we have these shows where we talk about mostly about the things of God and the body of Christ, it's important that we have an understanding and people listening to us understand what we say when we say things. Like if we say church, are we talking about the building, the institution, or are we talking about the body of Christ? Most people who are still within the system, when they say church, they are either referring to one or the other, depending on the context. But for us, most of the time, we're referring to it as the body of Christ. So when it comes to religion, you say conservative or liberal, let's define, what do you mean when you say you are a conservative? What do you mean when you say you're a liberal? Does that mean that you just say anything goes, you can do whatever they want to do? Is that what you're saying by being a liberal? Or conservative, you want to keep things tight, it's tight, but it's right? What do you mean? And I think that has to be a conversation that has to be had. And our own houses, and then with our neighbors and our coworkers. But we just take it to social media, and we'll take that word, and then we blast people who disagree with us. We throw out the word coon, Uncle Tom, and all these things, as we're talking about black people who may be Republicans, we throw these terms out at them without even knowing the people. Without even knowing. I never really considered myself a Republican or a Democrat. Like I said, I only voted Democrat because that's what my daddy did. Basically, that's what my daddy did. And then when I became a church, I considered myself a Republican because of the views, their quote-unquote conservative views, as I talked about, their stance. Like as I said, two issues, abortion and stance on gay marriage. And that's why I became a Republican. But right now, I'm a Jonathan. That's what I am.
And I did, listen, I would laugh at that, but I understand what you're saying. Because let me take you to another aspect of it. When we look at candidates and think of candidates, their religious faith comes into question. Like, they'll say now, this person is a Christian candidate, but now they're breaking it down even further. So now it's not only the fact that you, quote unquote, have this label of Christian, it's what type of Christian are you? What denomination are you? Who is your pastor? All those things come into place in a huge, huge way. And I don't want anyone for a minute to think that religion does not play a factor in how people vote. Because now there's questions about whether one particular candidate is a Pentecostal or not. So now what they do is instead of attacking this candidate on their stances and issues, they attack their theology. As if somehow, is it possible that a person's theology plays a part in their decision making? I would be a fool to say it doesn't play a part. But how much, one will never be able to determine how much a person's faith plays into part. Because some of the most quote-unquote Christian leaders we ever had in this country were some of the most evil and diabolical people that ever walked this planet. So let's not equate that to all of a sudden getting this mentality that because we're putting a Christian in the office that, everything is going to be okay now. That's not logical.
It's not logical, but... No, go ahead. No, I was just going to say it's not logical, but it's definitely what people what people look for because what a lot of times, especially in Christian circles, they look to they look to vote people in who are just like their pastor. We're not going to go into the whole pastor aspect of it, but if if you know that somewhere along the line, your pastor is not exactly up to par, the way it should be, then you shouldn't be looking for a candidate that mimics your pastor. You know what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of people do. And the next thing we have, for the next 4 or 8 years, we have somebody that totally destroyed the economy and destroyed the country because you thought that this Christian was actually going to do some good, and that's not what happened.
But this idea, man, that one person gets into office and has the ability to completely derail or change a country is absolutely foolish. When a president does not have the power to change the country by himself. He has the ability to influence. They make a president almost on the same level as kingship, and it's not. It's really, and I think that's one of the things that people don't understand how politics works. There's a reason why having a Republican Congress and Senate is an issue. Like, there's a problem with that. And it would be a problem if one of those things were fully Democrat also. There's a reason why they're in place. And it really bothers me, man, to see people getting wrapped up in trying to incorporate religion with politics. Like, we haven't even touched on the whole dominionism aspect of it. And we did an early show on the NAR and all those nutty behind people when we first started Real Talk Radio. I think it might need to be revisioned again. Dominionists just have this ultra quote-unquote patriotic view of his country, that there are people who actually believe that in order for Jesus to come back, that America has to be at a certain salvation theological perspective. Like,
Just America.
listen to what I'm saying.
Nowhere else.
That America, that wasn't even in formation during biblical times, has to hold a certain theological view and perspective in order for Jesus to return. So man is in control of the time and the hour that Jesus shows up.
That's crazy.
And that really goes to, he talked about the NAR, that stands for the New Apostolic Reformation, and they're the biggest pushers of this dominionist theology, and it's even crept inside the black church. When you hear songs like going back to Eden or taking it back, they want to take back this country, take back this world, like the elder said, before Jesus can return. We have to take it back. And they have these 7 mountains that they're trying to claim. And the 7 mountains are arts and entertainment, business, education, family, government, media, and religion. They want to take over all of these things. They have Christians being in charge of all of these things. And they think once the Christians control all these things, Christians can control the world, and then Jesus can come back. It's a very, very, very flawed way of thinking.
That's got to be the most asinine thing that I've ever heard in my life.
It may be, but it's sneaky, it's deceptive, because people, like I said, it's crept into the church. You hear it in some of these songs. It's crept into Pentecostalism. It's pretty much already infiltrated into the institutional church all across the board. It's already there.
And, people have this idea, man, that, in order for America to be great again, that you have to have a president who holds some sort of theological foundation and base. Like, this country was ever based upon Christian, and I'm talking about biblical Christian principles. This country was never based upon that. Even to the people who always talk about having prayer back in school. We need to have prayers in school again to make America great. Do you realize that when prayer was in school, that this country was underneath the largest and most difficult, evil, vile, racial time that you ever had before in your life, during Jim Crow segregation? Prayer was in school. That wasn't changing anything. So this idea that somehow or another, that if we get a Christian president in office, that things are going to get better, is absolutely mind-blowing. That we have this nation type of thought process when it comes to the Christian faith, and not understanding that it is your individual relationship with Jesus that influences corporately. It's not corporately influencing Jesus. It's just really, really deceptive and really, really sad. And when it comes to the Republican, being predominantly having a white mentality, there's a level of truth there, because white people can be just as ignorant about the Republican Party and Democratic Party as black folks can be. This is not just a black issue. Ignorance doesn't know a skin color. It's really important for people. I don't want to put this to say black people own this issue, because we don't. This is a humanistic issue where people love to draw and take sides based off of their own perspective and their own views, which are incredibly subjective. And like Nathan said, there is not an inherent standard of measure to determine who is what and who is not what. There's no plumb line. So just because somebody comes in office and says they're a Christian doesn't mean that they are actually a Christian. It can mean many different things. So again, now how do we begin to establish who is who, what is what, and who needs to be where? You got to be really careful with these things, man. welding that Christian label like it's a sword. Easy killer, easy. Because I know a whole lot of folks that were, you know what I mean, Christians who were some diabolical, evil folk. So let's not do that.
And even just to go a little deeper into that, like you said, when you walk into a room and somebody say, I'm a Christian, what does that exactly mean? Because you've got the Catholics who call themselves Christians. You've got Mormons who call themselves Christians. You've got Jehovah's Witnesses who call themselves Christians. You've got people on the Protestants who call themselves Christians, who are not really Christians. You got Hebrew Israelites who call themselves Christians. I mean, I don't get it.
You have the KKK who call themselves Christians.
Yep, you went there. And so, like Doctor said, we have to define terms. Go ahead.
No, I think that's a huge problem. When Donald Trump went to Liberty University earlier this year, and if I'm not mistaken, I want to say he actually gave a speech on Dr. King's birthday, or the day that is recognized for Dr. King's birthday. That on so many levels is an affront to the black community. It was an affront to many of the black students who were at Liberty. It was an affront to many of the white students who were at Liberty, because they know Donald Trump does not stand for what Liberty for years, in many minds, I'm not even talking about Farwell, I'm talking about many of the faculty and the students don't stand for. Like, this dude is perpetuating an ideology that is ingrained in this country, but is also very destructive. So it's really, I'm telling you.
Not to mention, he also tried to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, I tend to really, when I have these discussions with people about politics and religion, I'm a question guy. I'm not giving you any statements. I'm not sharing necessarily where I stand or my view. I want to have a dialogue where we're actually chopping it up to get some understanding of where you are and what you believe, long before I share my views. Because when I share my views, 9 times out of 10, it's going to become a us versus them type of discussion, and I'm not there for all that.
I know you was just talking about, when Donald Trump went to Liberty University and he, tried to pretty much pass himself off as, being for the black populace that was there, being that he gave this statement, around King's birthday. He also tried to pass himself off as a Christian using the Bible, talking about 2 Corinthians. That's what it all stands for. You know what I'm saying? And every Christian that was there, my wife, she graduated from Liberty University, and she's had some people who actually spoke to her, after that whole thing took place, and she was like, they were like, what is he talking about? He doesn't know anything about what he's talking about,
Fascinating. You're right, bro. You with us, brother?
Oh, yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, homie.
We got you, man.
For sure. All right. My bad calling in so late. My phone's having multiple issues.
That's okay, bro. Share your thoughts with everything that's going on, man. What are you thinking about this topic, religion and politics, bro?
This topic, it's a win for the IC and for politicians altogether in the manipulation of people. And I say that due to what's going on here in Chicago. Our governor has just pretty much cut everything. Their school funding. They're closing down Chicago State. This dude is pretty much shut down hospices that people needed for mental health. The city is being pulled. A lot of the allocations for money are being pulled out of here. But on top of that, what happened was, in order to get this dude voted in, 2 preachers here, or pastors, whatever they want to call themselves, had their entire congregations, because these are mega churches here in Chicago, vote for this dude on their word, on the cusp of them just saying, you know what, let's put this dude in. And ever since, they're now been given seats on his regime so that they can sit with him and roll with him like that. So not only is he winning in tithes, these two pastors, they're winning in now they can hand their churches over to anybody because they have the political realm to do so. They're where they need to be on the backs of just taking a bunch of money away from the city. So it's stuff like this that lets me know that people are not aware of what they do in the church when it's just the IC by itself. They'll jump and dance in order to get that feeling, that buzz, in order to make that happen. But at the same instance, let this pastor go in and tell somebody that this person is good for them, no matter what the politician is, Democratic or Republican, and they'll do the exact same thing. So you get your money stolen and your livelihood stolen based on being in the IC, but secondarily you get your mind and all of the resources that come to your city or state taken based on the fact that this government is doing the same thing to you that the IC is doing to you. And that's the irony of it all, is that people aren't watching this with a watchful eye. People vote not based on a politician or their policies. People vote on tradition, and one of the traditions that they vote heavily upon is the church. And this it's not only killing you physically, but it's killing your entire community with what the church is doing to you or what the church is allowing to happen to you based on the government stepping in and imposing will on the church. And it's not a thing that people can readily see when they're on the inside. This is something that's been detrimental to the black community for years, like hundreds of years that, well, I won't say hundreds, but at the point where we actually got the vote, that has been detrimental to not only the black church, but the black entirety of Foreverville, America, because it can happen anywhere, not just Chicago. And one of the major things that's going on now that I hope people can see it is with Hillary. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and throw the name out there. She's done nothing for black people. Nothing. Like, look in 94, it's videos that prove that in 94, back when her and Clinton, of course, were in office, she gave the slogan, let's bring them to heel. Black people are super predators, if you will. And she won South Carolina. She won the whole South. And she has people, black people especially, dancing to her tune. I mean, she can nay with the best of them, or to the best of her white ability, and people are going nuts about voting for her. And this is the same woman that just told and just made it, her and her husband just made it so readily available for black people to be put in church 3 times more than any other presidential regime. And we're just dropping the ballot for her like she's one of the homegirls, like in a hood or something. Like she had a biracial baby with one of our brothers, and it's just all good again. Like, come on, man, do we not see the epitome of how this organization known as the church has allowed her to slide back in and manipulate black people all over again? Where's the thought and the rationale for people that should be out here fighting against somebody like this? We just readily do it. Readily.
And LL, they're not thinking. And I think the fact of it is that there's so much trust that's being placed in the hands of these quote-unquote pastors within the church, because we know that's how the institutionalized church is set up. It's set up for the pastor to be the mouthpiece, the leader, the perspective giver, the idea creator. You know, it's that dude. So when you have these communities, such as what's taking place in Chicago, what's happened in Philly, when you see these doggone pastors aligning with these political figures, has weight in the community. Because what we have to acknowledge is within our community, pastors still carry some semblance of weight. We still have a reverence for pastors. When a pastor walks into a room, everybody gets quiet, everybody wants to chill, the cussing stops, put the liquor bottles away, all that type of stuff, because there is this notion still that they are the mouthpiece of God, that they are directly connected to God, that God speaks to them, and then they speak to the people. That notion that no one else can have a relationship with God, it's really indicative of what we see taking place within this church system. This codependent relationship that we have with pastors. It's unbelievable. No one wants to acknowledge how Hillary specifically
has been one of the most destructive forces, along with her husband, that has ever hit the black community. Like, literally, one of the most destructive forces, her and her husband. Not just based off of opinion, this is fact. So when you see black pastors aligning themselves with her, it's, to me, it's as destructive and as much a problem as when I see black pastors lining up with Donald Trump. The one thing I can admire about Donald Trump is he's upfront with his ideology. He's upfront with who he is and what he believes. Hillary is still playing the game, and people are still falling for it time and time again.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's really sad? It's something that I've always said and always held and maintained this belief, that the institutional church is part of the world's system. It's part of the world. And if you take a step back and look at it and just imagine and think about what was just said by LL and Elgin, how can you not come to that conclusion? You got this man in charge who's running everything. He's set up as a king and a ruler over these people. And Jesus said it shouldn't be like that. He said the Gentiles exercise lordship over each other. And that's what you see inside the institutional church. It's a part of the world system. It's just like it. It's ran like a business. That's part of the world system. And now we got the political season going on, and you see how you have these mega pastors who are in bed with these politicians because these pastors are aspiring. How many people do you know have taken their pulpit and used it as a stepping stone to get into politics? Tons of them. The biggest one, Republican, is Mike Huckabee. You got people all over the country that use their church as a stepping stone to get into politics. And it's sad because they are all part of the same system, the world system. It's bigger than what we actually see because we are so stuck on coming here and listening to this, coming in and having this pastor hoop and holler and jump and shouting. We get our flesh fed on Sunday mornings. We come to hear a word from the Lord, come to hear some good singing. Or the choir blew. They showed blew today, but we're being used. And we don't even see it. We got to wake up, saints. We got to wake up and see what's really going on. We got to see it.
Man, you're really passionate about that one, aren't you?
Well, I mean, it is what it is.
I ain't mad at you. I can remember times when politicians back in New York, who are actually preachers, would come and they would come and preach at our church. You understand what I'm saying? And then when election time roll around, because that particular candidate preached at our church, we know him a little better than the other candidate. Come on, let's vote for him. So I understand where you're coming from, because that particular candidate wasn't really for us. He as black as he was, his policies actually worked against us. You know what I'm saying? And so, people don't see that deception, until it's too late. And when it's too late, there's nothing else you can do after that.
It's just a really treacherous place, man. It's really difficult to navigate. I have certain times of the year that is incredibly difficult for me to deal with people. I'll be honest with you. Christmas, Easter, incredibly difficult for me to deal with Christians because of their views and their lack of understanding and lack of knowledge is something that I often struggle with. And I don't do well with the political season because I despise politics. I despise politics based off of what politics has done, what it is, the affront that it is, it's incredibly, incredibly difficult to deal with. But I often try to educate people on what it is. And it's difficult for you to even educate people about politics without someone considering you to try to attack a particular candidate or attack a particular viewpoint or ideology. Like, outside of Donald Trump's racist white supremacist ideology, as a politician, what kind of guy is he going to be for the country? What is he going to bring to the country? Along with Hillary Clinton's long history of what she did with her husband and after, is that the type of person we want in office? Bernie Sanders, it's just so many questions that I think are not being able to be answered. Also because, like Nathan stated earlier, we're getting tons of sound bites and clips. There's not many people who are actually attending these rallies who are reporting back accurate information, because people who are attending these rallies often have a vested interest in the particular candidate. There's really no non-biased perspective. You turn to CNN, you're more likely going to get one perspective. You turn to Fox News, you're going to get one. So then you incorporate Jesus into this. Then you incorporate the Christian faith into it. Now, the dominionist thought process of trying to make America great is pervasive, and it's out there. But many Christians hold what I would probably call a mini dominionist thought process, that they feel like having a Christian president in office is going to make America better also. It's the same type of viewpoint. They have this notion, and which shows a firm lack of understanding of what sanctification is. They really believe that by putting a Christian president in office, that this is going to make more people become Christian. That God's going to be pleased. And by God being pleased, we're going to get more blessings. And things are going to improve because we have put a Christian person in the highest level of office in our country. That is really, really ignorant of how the Christian faith works. That's the same thing as someone saying that if I don't do X, God is going to do X. If I do X, God is going to do X. There's no difference between the two. It's just on a larger scale. It's the same thing as people who tithe, thinking that I'm going to tithe because God is going to bless me or protect my finances. I'm going to put a Christian president in office. That way God is going to protect us from ISIS. He's going to protect us from Islam. He's going to protect us from all these self-interests, instead of going to God and saying, God, you know what would you like me to do? Give me the wisdom to make the right decision here. Because, frankly, I don't trust none of these folks.
It's kind of, and tagging in on what you just said there, the preacher is the gateway person to make all of this stuff happen. He or she at the pulpit takes money from the people in order for them to, or not even in order for them to do anything, because they don't do anything. They just readily hand it over. In the same way, the politician comes in and says, I'll give you this amount of money if you allow me to speak to this congregation and make them sway their votes for me. And that's what Hillary has done predominantly. She's gone to a lot of these churches. Now, don't get me wrong, and I know I said before that she doesn't do anything for black people, but she has. She gives them money in order to secure the votes. Or she'll name drop, like Sandra Bland when she was not in Texas, but she knew she wanted to go into Texas in order to get those votes there. But what politicians do is they give this pastor or these preachers money in order to secure these votes. And that's one of the main things that Hillary has done as well. In order to go into a black church, you have to, it's almost like all politicians know, to swing that black vote, I'm going to drop these dollars and I'm going to get this amount of votes in order to succeed. Because the only way you can get black people to do anything is you have to go to that church and see them shuck and jive. And then that's when these allocated votes will come in for this amount of money. But that's if you're not aware. That's if you're not thinking. But that's the only way to get black votes. When you see a politician do a certain dance, when you see them go to a black church, when you see them supposedly be down for the movement, whatever the movement may be, for that once in a year moment, when you see them name drop, when you see them say something that stirs black people's emotions up, especially at a church, you now have votes. you now have the black vote. It's not like black people are different outside of church. The only thing that can get us through is church and manipulate us through church, because that's the major organization that we're manipulated the most. You can't manipulate us outside on the streets. You can't manipulate us when it comes to our kids. You can't manipulate us when it comes to our jobs and making money. But the moment you get us in church, oh, my God, you got us. We're going to vote for you, hook, line, and sinker. And the only person who has not done something like that, who has not taken super PACs or let these churches pay him in order to get popular votes, is Bernie Sanders. Trump has done it. Trump has gone to, Lincoln College or Lincoln University in order to spew rhetoric there and get the people riled up. And Bernie has gone there as well, but not to do to that same token as to politically get people to side with him. He's never brought religion in it, except for that one time he was asked by CNN what he thought of religion, or what was religion like for him. And you heard how instrumental he was with his father about growing up Jewish. However, other than that, look at Hillary's response and what she's done to the black church in order to get that vote. Major politicians are doing. We see that all the time in Chicago. If there's not a jingle some black woman is singing in order to get his vote in a church or on the radio that you hear them all the time, if there's not someone saying, let me lend my altar to this politician and hear from him what the Lord is speaking, like the Lord is speaking through a politician, what these the lies and corruption that goes on inside of the governmental institution, it also goes on in the IC, but people suck this up like it's the Gatorade of poisons. It's the drink of choice. And I don't get it, like, for the life of me.
I like that. Gatorade of poison. That was good. Hey, Nathan, bro, I think we got some callers, man. You want to go ahead? And for those who are listening, man, feel free to call in and share your thoughts. We would love to hear from you. The call-in number is 661-449-9951. That's 661-449-9951. Press 1, and we'll love to hear your thoughts, man, and share what you have on your heart. Nathan, what we got, bro? Who we got up first?
972, you're live on Real Talk Radio. What's your name and your comment?
Hey, this is Andrea. Okay, so I'm not,
What's good?
I'm not for any particular political party. You know, whoever we decide to vote to put in office, I expect for them to do their job. I mean, you know, it sounds like the guy who's on here, he's just really anti-Hillary, and that's fine. And you can make your statement, but all of us have a certain responsibility to look at all the stuff. I mean, because like you said, some people vote based on their Christian values, and they want to talk about, you know, they're against abortion and all that stuff. But, you know, on the flip side, you know, people talking about they're against abortion, but they don't mind aborting somebody's life once they come into the real world. Anytime we go to war and our troops are put in harm's way, that's an abortion of a life, whether it's in the womb or outside the womb. You can't say you're pro-life, but then you don't care about about making up a lie to go to war, and it kills our brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and whoever else. Okay, so then people want to say, well, you know, they had this and they had that. You know, they thought George Bush was a praying president, and yeah, he was, with the EY down to AY, because he played on the minds of the political people to do what they wanted to do. So you got to look at all that stuff. I remember telling somebody when he got voted into office, when George Bush was voted into office, and she, we got a praying president. I said, you got to be careful what you ask for. I said, because what's going to happen? I said, you just mark my word, what's going to happen? You know how it is. You live in a 2-story house. You let the upstairs just go. It doesn't matter, you know, because you ain't taking nobody up there anyway. Everything downstairs looks clean, looks nice. And after a while, all the junk you keep taking upstairs, the bottom falls out. And it's the people at the bottom who always get hurt. And that's exactly what happened. And then we sit back and we want to point our finger about. We got to look at the whole thing. Hillary wasn't in office when Bill was there, and so she said what she said. Everybody said stuff that we regret later on saying or doing or whatever. She's no different. Bernie's no different. He said stuff and done stuff. Everybody has done something. So we got to look at it from a bigger perspective than just looking at certain things that happen along the way. I mean, if you didn't become a Christian, you still be the same person you were back there, lying, cheating, stealing, doing it. Some of us are still lying, cheating, stealing. We become Christians. That stuff doesn't change. You know, and then as far as being a conservative is concerned, you know, most people say, I don't look at it from black and white perspective, even being a conservative. Some people, they say they're fiscally conservative, which means they're all about saving the money, but they're only about saving the money until it's time to go to war. then it's, open the floodgates and let all the money come so we can spend all the money we want on the defense and all that kind of stuff. It's stupid. At the end of the day, how we try to divide ourselves down certain political party lines when really what we want is the people who we vote into office to do what they need to do for everybody, not for one particular group of people, not for one, whether they're black or white or purple or whatever. We want them to do what we voted them into office to do. And for the most part, a president can't do that all by themselves because they're up there at the whim of the Congress. So, it's just kind of asinine to me how we try to look at all this stuff based upon certain little things that come out of people's mouths. Like a Donald Trump, there's no way in hell I would vote for a Donald Trump. No way. People say, well, he's a good businessman. He can say that now. But hey, anytime somebody hands you $200 million, what are you gonna do with it, right? It's just crazy. It's crazy how we try to, make people feel bad about another person. Vote your conscience. If you think Hillary's going to be good, vote for Hillary. If you think Bernie's going to be good, vote for Bernie. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to all meet everything that you want. Nobody is, because nobody's perfect like that. Nobody. And I think I have a book in here called Red and Blue Church, Black and Blue God. And that's what winds up happening. We try to divide God down some political party line or some issue, and then we look stupid because we're saying, well, oh God, this is what God's going to do for our group. But it doesn't happen. When they had George Bush in office, they had the majority of the Congress who was Republican. Did they get rid of abortion? Hell no, they didn't, because they like kicking that can up the road. So they came up with that bogus war, put us into a war that had nothing to do with anything, and they aborted the issue of abortion until the next go-around, until the next go-around, until the next go-around. It's just ridiculous. It's all a part of the big game, and at the end of the day, you got to vote your conscience. And it doesn't, this guy can get on here and keep talking about Hillary all he wants to. You're not going to sway people because you keep doing that. Bernie he's not perfect either. And, just from here, yeah, I like what he says. I like what Hillary says. And sometimes to me, it's all about the historical purpose or whatever, because, it's way past time to me for a woman to be in office. So for me, sometimes, like with President Obama, I didn't vote necessarily because of his policies, because there's only so much he can do. I voted because he was black. Seriously, that's it. Look at how much he's been bottlenecked in Congress. Seriously. I care whether he was Muslim. I didn't care about all that kind of stuff. It just gets to be so crazy. I feel bad for us as a country, because it says a house divided against itself cannot stand. But we don't want to throw those scriptures out either, because if we're constantly going down Republican and Democratic party lines, we're never going to get anywhere, because everybody has their own perspective on what they think and how they think it ought to get done. When you just should vote your conscience, leave all your brand of whatever out the door, because nobody's going to line up to everything that you want them to be. It's just not possible. So I'd rather somebody get out there, like you guys talking about Donald Trump runs his mouth and says, hey, but I still wouldn't vote, because, he's letting me know straight off rip what he's going to do, and the same thing with Hillary. All of us have to make our best choice, and it may not be what somebody else likes, and I don't care. I don't care what people think and how I vote. Because if I voted for George Bush, I had brothers who went to the Gulf War, and there was no way in hell I was going to vote for a man who was sending my family into harm's way. Wasn't going to do that. Just that alone, and all other stuff didn't matter. Just that alone. When you don't have nothing invested, there's nothing vested for you. You don't care about anything other than that one thing. So at that time, I had brothers who were going to the war. I didn't want him in office. That was the only reason why I didn't vote for him. So, it has nothing to do with all that other political crap, just that one issue. And so everybody has to vote their conscience at the end of the day. And like I said, I'm a woman now, and I would love to see a woman in office in a story. That's just Andrea.
All right.
No politics aside, I don't care. She's just a woman, and hey, it's time. We've had enough men. We've had a black man now. We've had all these white men. Now it's time for a woman. That's the way I'm looking at this time. So that's not too much for what it was.
But hold on the Hillary aspect, and I'm not pro-Hillary, anti-Hillary, but just for a woman, her policies.
I was just like I said. I didn't. Policy to me was an issue because I know how the government works, right? So there's only so much they can do. They don't make all the laws. They don't do all that. So for me this time, hey, I'm voting because she's a woman. That's me. That's Andrea. Because I vote when you think about all these people we voted for over the years, what have any of them done for black people? Seriously. With any of them. Name one. What did George Bush do for anybody? Nothing. What did Bill
They haven't done
Clinton
anything for them.
Yeah, so why then put all that onus on Hillary? Well, she hasn't done anything with the black community. What has any of them done for the black community? What? I mean, if you can name me something that they did, then I can see you having an issue with Hillary. But if you can't name anything that anybody else did for the black community, then your argument is moot. So then you go to something else. And for me, because none of them have really done a whole lot for black people, I'll just vote because she's a woman. Period. End of story. For me. I can't speak for anybody else. That's just for Andrea. Historical purpose for me this time. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
All right.
All right. Y'all have a good day.
All right, sis. Appreciate it.
Let me touch on that one because she obviously was coming towards me with that one to say I'm anti-Hillary. I'm not anti-Hillary. She's just been anti-black people for a long time. And you can, search her history and go back and find that. She was a Goldwater woman. She supported Goldwater. I mean, just go look that up on Google. You'll find out more about that. And also what she did in the 90s, which led most black people to incarceration based on her saying, even though she apologized for it, she said it, and it's been implemented since, that black people are super predators. And that's what we looked at. And that's why Arizona could get choked out in New York. Come on. It's not that I'm anti-her. She's anti-us. And secondly, what have politicians done for black people? Look at Bernie. Was chained to 2 women in Chicago for housing rights, equal housing rights at UIC back in the 60s. Y'all can go to the next caller, though. I just have to drop that out there.
All right. Area code 919. 919. You are live on Real Talk Radio. What's your name and your comment?
Hey there, folks. This is Southeast Vince.
What up, Vince?
Hey, how y'all doing? You all are doing an excellent show today. My thing is, we can't, and I hear people saying, what are politicians doing for black people and things like that, but we can't depend on the government to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves, and we, we vote for these people. We say, okay, well, this person's going to help out the black community and everything. And just like the guy said just a few seconds ago, it's not that he's anti-Hillary. It's that Hillary is anti-us. And a lot of things she has done has really been detrimental to the black community. And I'm like this. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you are Republican. I don't trust any of you. I just don't. I don't trust politicians because they get up there, they make these swelling speeches, and basically what a politician is the person who makes the better sounding speech to get the most people to vote for them. That's how I see a politician as, because they get up there, they make these promises, and when they get into office, they just stick us in the rear. That's basically what they do. But see, that's why the government is supposed to be run by the people. See, a lot of us, we think, okay, we got this leader in office, and he's going to do for us what we voted for him to do. And most of the time, they don't. And see, we need to make them accountable for their actions. We just put them up there, and and we don't vet them. We listen to their speeches. We're like, oh, he's going to do this for us, because he said he's going to do it. Yeah, he says he's going to do it, but what you say and do are 2 different things. So that's my take on it. And everybody has their opinion, and I have no problem with people's opinions about whether they vote for Democrats or Republicans or anything. But another thing that gets me is what you all were talking about, the people trying to exploit Christians to vote for them. And, a lot of people, they're on the Donald Trump, he's this and he's that. Donald Trump is not a Christian. Okay, let's just be point blank. Donald Trump is not a Christian. And, when he said a lot of people are coming against him because he's a strong Christian, Donald, please. I mean, really. We can look at you and say, Donald, you are not a Christian. But the question I wanted to ask you all, now that we're going into the presidential elections and everything, you get a lot of people saying, you need to go out there and vote. You need to go out there and vote. You need to vote. Vote. And they say, well, it's your responsibility to vote and everything. And now the last election, when I voted, I wrote my name in because I wasn't voting for Obama. I wasn't voting for Mitt Romney because I think both of them bad for the country. And some people came against me and said, well, when you did that, you put Obama back into office. But my thing is, okay, now let's say that you were a Democrat and Obama was up for election, and you said, well, I don't like Obama, so I'm going to write my name in. Are you going to say, well, you write your name in and help to put Mitt Romney into office? You see where I'm getting at? You know, when I see both sides of screwing the country, I vote like my mom up in Washington D.C. does. My mom said the last time she voted, she put Mickey Mouse. I said, you know what, that might be a good idea. But the last election, I just wrote my name in because I was like, I don't like the direction either candidate is. I don't like the direction that they're taking this country in. You know, and I see myself as an individual. And when I say I'm not going to vote for either one, you know, isn't that me speaking my mind and saying, you know, this is my voice. This is how I'm going to vote. But when they say you don't vote for either one, they're saying that, oh well, you're not exploiting your right to vote. But I am. I feel like I am. You know?
Let me go ahead and address your question, bro, because I think it's a pertinent question. That thought process right there, man, of trying to figure out who to vote for, just the whole scheme of this political thing, man, is just really nuts. And I think when you listen to people have religious or political conversations, you see the passion, you see their own subjective views that they have and their own desires that they have. And oftentimes it's based off of a place where they have a particular thing lined up with what they want from a particular person going to office. So that's how they vote. And that's cool. It's okay. But for me, I choose to participate in the voting process one particular way that may be different than other people's particular way of voting. I don't know, when you start talking about how we have kept a particular person out of office because of your vote, that just shows a complete lack of understanding of how voting takes place. Me not voting is not going to determine how one particular candidate gets in office or not. It doesn't work that way. And I wish I had time to actually break down how the Electoral College versus the popular vote actually works. But I think that is something important that those – no, I'm not. I think there's something that really listeners should actually look for themselves and study for themselves. Simply Google Electoral College. There's tons of YouTube videos out there that will walk you through what the process is and how it works. It came in popular during the 2000 election between Al Gore and George Bush, when Al Gore actually won the popular vote but still lost the presidency. That's when the Electoral College actually became popular, but it's been around since, I think, 1887. Just look and see what it is, man. It's not nearly what you think. But the voting aspect, you're not keeping one particular candidate in that office by your particular vote. Then when you throw the whole black vote in there, remember, black people make up less than, I think, 13% of the population. So even if all the people, black people in this country voted for a particular candidate, it does not guarantee that that particular candidate is going to get in office. So even when people want to throw, you know, when they equate and talk about how President Obama's presidency was good, bad, or ugly, when they talk about it being bad, they want to blame black people for putting him in office because he's black and just assume that since he's black, everybody who is black voted for him. I have an issue with that because now you're just insulting our intelligence that we can't look past a person's skin color to determine whether they're going to be a viable candidate or not. I'm not going to allow people to fall and assault us like that with that type of thought process. The reality of it is there are a lot of black people who did vote for President Obama based off of the color of his skin. Now the question becomes, why did they do that? Why did all these black people feel the need to vote for a black person as office? It wasn't just a simple fact of black folks trying to get a leg up and to become a better socioeconomic status in this country. It's the fact that this country has been built upon and maintained on a racist, white supremacist ideology since the inception. So we wanted some sort of victory. So we decided to vote for President Obama. It's that fundamental. And I just think it's really difficult. And then when people start talking about none of these politicians have ever done anything for the black community. So why do we want to have somebody? Why do we think somebody new was going to do it? That's an absolute fallacy. You got to be careful of that. You're not going to equate what other people have done in the past on what someone should do in the future. We don't do it in any other relationship. So why would we do it here? It's just really, 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 really dangerous conversation. And you see, as we're about to bring on 773, you're about to be live on Real Talk Radio, you see how difficult this conversation can be. And this is a somewhat controlled environment. This is real difficult. But 773, you're live on the air of Real Talk Radio. What's your name? What's your comment? 773, you're live. 773, going once, going twice.
No dice.
No dice. And I knew, fellas, having this show, and I think it was one of the things that we didn't spend a whole lot of time chopping the show because we wanted the organic aspect of the show. But I knew that when we started mentioning particular candidates, that can be kind of hairy. That can be one of the things that, gets people riled up. Because, again, by you simply start talking about a particular candidate, by saying what a candidate has done negatively, the assumption is that you're anti them or you're pro someone else. Just the same situation we run into when we start talking about the church. Because we point out the fallacies and the difficulties and the issues within the institutionalized church, many people assume that we're anti-church and we hate the church, which is Father's Day for the church. We talk about it because we have such a great love for it.
That's truly it. I'm not against any of the politicians that are out here. I just point out where they're against black people, and automatically, like I was saying, that the assumption is I'm anti-Hillary. and the only reason I brought names in is because this political race has automatically brought names in. But in a justifiable way, we still see that most of them have linked themselves to a church to try to get a vote either out of black people or just out of Christians. Trump did it at the university where he messed up and said 2 Corinthians, and Hillary has been doing it with the black church since she's been walking. I mean, they even joke about her husband being the first black president. Like it's not something that I'm just throwing out there to say like, oh my God, she's just taking black people for the vote. But she is taking black people for the vote. It is what it is, and that falls on the church being the instrument in order for that establishment to happen. And again, the way we shuck and jive and dance, all of the dances and songs we come up with, they emulate that to try to get the black vote. Are we not aware of that, even outside of the church? Like, why would we allow it? It's crazy to me that we just so readily invest ourselves to a politician because they want to look like us or talk like us or do a dance like us or go to the same churches we go to. But we allow that to happen. The more we say, yeah, take my vote because you already took my mind because I'm stuck in the IC.
Yeah, and you also notice.
Go ahead, Drew.
You also notice that the 2 biggest groups that people try to exploit during the political season are black people and church folks. So most of the time you're going to see them in black churches. So that because you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone when you do that. Because the black church has a very huge influence on the black community, and so go to a black church. Speak your case. You just killed 2 birds with 1 stone right there.
Yep. Man.
It's just
go ahead, Elton.
Nathan. It's when you start and having this discussion is a discussion that I think that needs to have more often. I think more of our white brethren need to participate in these type of topics with black brethren. I think it needs to be those type of dialogues that take place. Because, for one, this topic right here, white Christians for years, or some of our white brothers, some of our level-headed understanding of what this country has done and continues to perpetuate towards black people, when they have that understanding, they're not often speaking up about this particular topic. And when they do, they are in such a position because of their whiteness that they are not able to come in with black folk to have this kind of discussion, to share what these people are doing to us, because there's a whole other dynamic to that. So it needs to be an open forum type of dialogue that we have individually where we are able to talk about this, because we see how much race plays a factor in this political climate. Race is the number one issue on the political scene right now with this election. The number one issue. The number one issue right now is, what are you going to do to somehow fix the racial climate, is the underlying question to every candidate. And I think it's an unfortunate and unfair question to ask, because no one person is going to be able to fix racism, white supremacy. It's not going to happen. True. But when you start thinking about what Donald Trump stands for, when you start thinking about what Hillary Clinton has stood for and continues to stand for, when you think about what Bernie has said, you think about all these different things, and that's not some type of endorsement for Bernie, because Bernie has not come out of his mouth and said what he would do specifically and exclusively for black issues. Now, why do I want any candidate to specifically say something about black issues? Why? Because, for one, I'm a black man who is having a really, really difficult time in this country, which everyone is aware of. So we want that. But are any black people depending upon any of these candidates to come through and to be our savior and to fix our issues? Do you insult us that much to actually believe that we are putting all of our hope in the basket of one of these candidates? Unfortunately, many black people are doing that, which has always been an issue for us, that we are depending for someone to come into our community and to fix our issues. I think, but what we're trying to articulate to people also is, we don't want a candidate in office who's going to come in and be destructive to our community while we try to build it up either. Hence the reason why most of us is anti-Hillary, because we see what her husband did, what she's done, and we don't want her in office to continue that same thing while we try to build up Chicago, while we try to do the things that we're trying to do positively in our communities. We don't want somebody to come in office to hinder or make those things difficult. We're not necessarily looking for a savior. We're just making sure that you ain't going to be the devil in our community either.
And another thing that we often forget about the local elections. You know, we forget about voting for our state representatives, you know, and our congressmen and stuff like that. Because we don't really know much about that, because the media doesn't really report too much. You only really hear from them during the campaign season. Now, with the president, you hear about what the president and what they're doing all the time. But when it comes to your, not even just your congressmen and representatives, but, you know, people who are locally, your county commissioner, people like that, your sheriff, the sheriff's office, stuff like that. We don't often vote for those local elections because we think they're not important, but they are very, very important as well, if you want to vote. I mean, the local politics are just as important as national politics. Now, and I think when we get to how the churches run and how they have influence on local politicians, you may have local politicians that go to your church. Your pastor might be on your city council.
Which is a problem in itself to me. But
I know one, and I've always had issues with him, period, but I've seen him running for city council. I'm like, oh, my goodness. I can't vote in the local, because I live on the outside of the actual city limits of Cincinnati, but where I am is still considered Cincinnati. I live in a township. But in Cincinnati, I can throw a rock and hit it, you know. So I can't vote in local city of Cincinnati elections for their city council. But I know this pastor. He has not a real big mega church, but he's real high tech. I mean, they got the smoke machines. I've been to his church. The smoke machines, the lights. It's like you're on the stage, like at a concert. Seriously, nice sound system. But he has ran and was voted onto city council, and he's been around for ages. Been around for a long time. And how did he get the vote? His congregation. He think he made the city council. Had a lot of his congregation, had a lot of people going out, voting for him, getting people to vote for him, and he made it because of his congregation. Not because of really what he stood for, but because of his congregation and their family members and their friends. So we have to look at those local elections as well. Religion and politics. I mean, talk about fighting words. Disagree with me on my religion, disagree with me on my politics, and we're going to have a problem. That's just the way of the world, folks. That's the way of the world.
Bring that caller on, bro. Bring the caller on. 412, you're live on the air, Real Talk Radio. 412,
hey, what's up, fellas? Hey, Revolution, everybody. You started talking about my little bit of expertise, at least a little bit, not in to say that I actually ran for office before. But I think that what you guys are talking about is very important. I want to throw this out there because I'm not sure if we're going down there, but we were talking about when it comes down to the local elections. I really want to stress to people that your local election is more important, if not the most important election that you can have. This presidential stuff is really a distraction, okay? And what I mean by that is Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, they ain't going to give a damn about your garbage being picked up, okay? When your neighbor decides that he wants to park his car, that abandon his car in his front yard, they could care less about that. It's these small little local issues that are more important for, and I'll just use as quick examples, that is more important for you than whether or not, Trump gets into the White House. Okay? And this is a theory that I'm floating out there, and so that we can focus more in on the local stuff. If, for instance, your candidate for president, whoever it may be, either Democratic side or Republican side, they don't win your nomination, and if you feel very convicted that you don't feel like going down your party line, vote down ballot, okay? When it comes down to your general election, forget about when it comes up for the first time, on the first line is always the president. Then after that, skip the president, vote for everything else. Okay? But take the time to research who you're going to be voting for. Like me politically, and I'll say this about myself. I am a registered Democrat. Okay? The reason why I'm a registered Democrat, when I should be registered to some other party that is far left of the Democratic Party, the reason why I'm a registered Democrat is because of my local jurisdiction. Okay? See, where I live in a place where basically the election is decided in the primary. You understand what I'm saying? And in Pennsylvania, we have closed primary in Pennsylvania. So I can't vote for if I'm independent, I can't vote in the primaries because I have to be registered in a party. And where I live with Democrats. Now, that would probably change if I moved to a locale where most of the politicians that I interact with would be Republican. You see what I'm saying? Not to say that my loyalties to the party are there. I vote for what's best for my interests, but I'm not voting for, like my mayor, even though he's a Democrat in my city of Clarendon, because I don't like some of the stuff that he does as a mayor. But I can't have an influence in his unless I was registered as that in that particular party. So what I'm saying for us is know your locales, know where your parties are, because that's more important. Because if you just focus in on just voting for the president, you're going to miss out on the person. Like, for instance, in my city, for me, my big issue, because I'm a cab driver, my big issue is the regulation of Uber, okay? And I'm not voting for my current state representative who is in favor of Uber. So I'm not voting for him. I'm voting for someone who's not in favor of Uber. You see what I'm saying? That's an issue that's really personal for me. So I just want to make sure that people know, go out, if you're going to vote, know your local stuff more so than the foolishness that Donald is pulling out for you. All right, guys.
I got you, bro. That makes sense, man.
Yeah.
Take care of your local elections, and I agree that your local elections, particularly in predominantly black communities, man, where the incarceration rate is so high, where your economy is faltering, those are the times where you actually can make some change there. Know who your district attorney is. Know who your mayor is. Know who your city council is. But get involved on other levels. Know who's on your school board. Those type of things are incredibly important, that know what's going on there. Because your DA is one of the most powerful people in your community.
Yep.
And how he handles things is indicative to your community. And I think that's an aspect that, because of a lack of political education, along with financial illiteracy, along with biblical illiteracy, that are so prevalent, unfortunately, within the black community, needs to be spent some time on. We need to start doing some more of that and educating people on how that type of thing actually flows. I think we have one more caller, fellas, and this is a 770. So I'm going to bring 770. 770, you're live on Real Talk Radio. What's your name? What's your comment? 770. All right. Well, 770 was there, but we cannot hear their audio, so we keep on passing you by. Hey, final thoughts, fellas. Final thoughts. Dre Day, you with us? Okay. No Dre. John, you with us? LL, are you with us?
Yeah. I hold my final thoughts. We got one more going.
Okay. Nathan, bro, I don't know where you disappeared to, man. 773. Okay, 773, you're live on the air.
Hello?
Yes, you're live, sis.
Hi. I was calling to talk about a couple of things, especially just now you guys are talking about local elections and how important they are. It is so true. I will attest to that. I actually live in Chicago, and right now we're having a local election for our state's attorney, which is so funny you just mentioned that. And our current one is Anita Alvarez, who was a part of the Laquan McDonald cover-up with Rahm Emanuel, the mayor, and we all heard about that, 16 shots in the cover-up. So right now we actually have an African-American woman named Kim Fox, who grew up here in Cabrini Green, who has been an attorney for over 18 years, and who has served the underserved communities, and actually got a chance to meet her and then speak with her and talk with her on some of these issues. And this lady is truly passionate about just police reform, and she believes police should be held accountable just like these citizens. She is talking about, in this type of climate, radical things, you know what I'm saying, and to be an African-American woman especially, and yet the polls are showing Anita is still ahead. And that just blew my mind, because I'm like, we had a whole protest here in Chicago where thousands of us blocked all of the stores on Magnificent Mile on Black Friday and caused them to lose millions and millions of dollars, and we were calling for the resignation of Rahm Emanuel and Anita Alvarez. And it just blows my mind that after blocking stores, after storming the streets, that Anita Alvarez is still ahead in the polls. So I was so moved by that I actually got involved in Kim Foxx's campaign just to help people get to know about her. Because it's like we can't let this happen just because people not hearing about Kim Foxx. We can't let this happen just because Kim Foxx doesn't have the type of political money and power behind her like Anita Alvarez has. That would just be a tragedy. And so I was like, I had to get involved. And one thing I will say, speaking on like the national election, the caller that y'all had before, the woman, she spoke about voting for Hillary because Hillary's a woman. And I just thought to myself, that is just that's such a shallow reason to vote for somebody. One of the reasons why I'm not down for Hillary, I'm a woman, is because going through what I just talked about here in Chicago, Hillary Clinton has come here after Rahm Emanuel has closed 50 schools, predominantly in black neighborhoods, which rose the crime rate because these kids don't have schools to go to. But nobody talks about that, what happened in Chicago. This man has he fired numerous teachers, and then on top of that, covered up a murder. And Hillary Clinton comes to Chicago and says, I back Rahm Emanuel. Like, how dare you? I mean, just the audacity. And then it's like people don't understand how the establishment politics work. They stick with each other. They stick with each other at our expense. They do not care. They care about favors. They care about keeping their power. They do not care about us. And it just blows my mind. And one thing I will say, right, is that when people say the Congress is such a big part of it, it's true. And the one thing people don't know is that in this election year, 80% our Congress is up for re-election. That means that we could literally do a changing of the guards. We could fire all them people if we want to. We have so much power this election season that people don't realize. And the thing I will say, the reason I am kind of impressed with Bernie Sanders is because the reason I know that is because of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has something right now called, the Bernie Brief or something online, where he does like a 5-minute video every week where he educates the voting public about particular issues going on in the White House and in D.C. He talks about Social Security. He talks about the Congress thing I just told you about. He's educating people. He's spending and investing his time. But you know what? A lot of people, I am considered a millennial. A lot of older people don't know nothing about that because they don't consume information through the same internet portals and connections that a lot of younger people do. So there's literally a group of people who are completely blind to a whole set of information of certain candidates, and I will argue by design. And when we talk about the church has so much to do with that because they will parade Hillary won 89% of the black vote in the South. These churches had a lot to do with that, and anybody who said that's not true is lying because these preachers will parade the Clintons around their church, but you ask black people in the Deep South, they don't even know who Bernie Sanders is. Like, they literally don't. And the reason that these black churches aren't fooling with certain people is because those certain people do not feed into their system. These certain people are not going to perpetuate the things that the black church and the institutional church does to exploit people. And so they don't have no investment in those certain candidates. And I do personally admire Bernie Sanders because we talking about the first black president. Well, I'm seeing somebody who could be the first president that wants the people woke. And that is significant. Because for somebody wanting you to know what the heck is going on, that shows you something about that person. That shows you that whether they win or lose, they just want you to have some power. They just want you to be aware. And that means something. Because all the rest of them, they thrive off of us not knowing. They thrive off of our ignorance. And so I just wanted to add that comment in because I think this matters, and I think that we have to be a little bit deeper than just wondering who's a woman and who's a what, you know. And I think that we need to think about these things deep because these are our lives, and these are decisions that can affect our whole lives locally and nationally. So those are my comments.
Absolutely. Thank you, sis, for chiming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You know, after a show like this, boy, it just makes you want to sing an old Baptist hymn. We knew going into this, when LL suggested this show to us, we knew this was going to be a firecracker. We knew it was going to set off shots, and not only would set off on the show, but when people listen to this in the archives, people are incredibly passionate about this stuff. But I like what the last caller said, that she's actually sat back and examined and researched and studied and see how on the local level a particular candidate has responded to a particular issue that has affected a large number of people, not just simply her. I think that's important. Final thoughts, Nathan, where you at? Put the neck phones down. Come through, brother. Come through on the line. What's on your mind? Because you've been quiet the whole time. And he's still quiet. John, what's on your mind, bro?
Yeah, it was a great show. It was an excellent show. And like you said, you know, people are passionate about it, and I try not to get into conversations about politics too much. Now, the religion part, you know, I'll bang with anybody about that, but the politics part, I try to stay out of it for the most part. But like you said, we need to have these open, honest dialogues, and it's hard to keep the emotions out of it. But when you do have these conversations, try your best not to be super emotional about them.
A whole lot of Carl Thomas is running around, bro. Emotional cats. Nathan, I think you might be live now, brother. Go ahead.
I think I'm live. I'll say this.
There you go.
My quick throw. Real quick. I will vote for anybody who starts to tax churches. If you want to say you're going to start taxing churches and making churches pay taxes, you got my vote. Amen? Amen.
Boy, I swear, if I was close to you, chopped right through the throat, bruh. I mean,
what? I mean, for real.
Okay, hey. And again, that's your personal preference. You know, that church taxing is the most pressing issue in you and your family's life. I can dig it.
Pay taxes, Pastor. Pay taxes.
Oh, God. LL, bail us out, bro, please.
I'm going to try. As the last caller stated, and as you said, as all the brothers have shared here, this is one of those topics where it's passionate because people take politics as extreme as they take religion. And it's kind of ironic that when you combine the two of them, one still would choose one side over the other, or they would choose their own rationale to try to vote for somebody based upon their religious aspect. And that's scary to me, that we can take these two, mesh them together, and it's still power, corruption, lies, deceit, deception, just to get someone to do something for them. The church does it, and the unfortunately our government does it. And I don't know, I think, as you said, El, people have to become way more conscious about the political game, the financial game, and the biblical illiteracy game in order to gain substance in their own lives and for their own communities, because they don't. Stuff like this will continue to happen. People have got to wake up. It's evidently clear and immediately.
Man, listen, I have given up cussing for Lent, but there's some people on this panel Who just making me pick it back up, bro? I'm serious. Like, Lord.
Don't break your fast. Don't break your fast.
Man.
Don't break your fast.
Woo, they don't know how hard it is. I can't wait for Easter, bro. I'm telling you. I'm letting loose a tirade. Like, Woo. Jesus. Hey, John,
yes,
I think we have another brother on the line, man, that we want to bring on, who I'm sure has some. Come on, man. Listen, bro.
What's going on, y'all?
There you go. Hey, General, you're going to have to help out, man. I need you to save Nathan's life, bro. Listen.
Man, great show. I wanted to say to that last sister who called Ashe, Hotep, and all. I'm saying that because y'all know I went undercover to this Kemetic conference here in Atlanta, and I've heard Ashe and Hotep probably about 50, 11 times through the weekend. But what she said was awesome. Only thing I wanted to say was, which has kind of generally been said, is that local politics, as I'm speaking from as an African American from the African American perspective for a second. We have been conditioned, trained over the last 50 or more years that basically that the federal government is our savior, right? And that we have placed a lot of emphasis on national politics and so on, and we really don't have a clue regarding local politics. And actually, we don't have a clue as far as local politics, as far as organizing, how it works, as much as we should compared to other people. The action is really in these state legislatures. They are making all kinds of laws in the interests of their constituents. They are, and another reason that this local politics is important is because you have these delegates and these electors. These people are chosen based on the local politics, in your area. You want me to say that again?
Yeah, because I don't think people heard you, bro.
Yes, the delegates that we're hearing a lot of discussion about, these delegates that are, because presidents are not elected by popular vote. They're elected there's a electoral college, which is composed of delegates. It's too much to get into right now, but these are basically people that are chosen to basically vote on our behalf for the most part.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And it's all kinds of different rules in different states. Some people get split up, these delegates, and then some people, if you're it's a winner take all. It's all kinds of different systems. But these people are chosen and selected based on the local politics in your state and in your, so that's another reason why these people why local politics is so important. But we really need to get on the ball in terms of local politics and understanding what's happening in these city councils and in these state legislatures, because there's a lot of stuff that's happening that we are not paying attention to, and we find out after it's been passed and the governor getting ready to sign it. You have organizations. All they do, it's an organization called ALEC. All they do is go to different states. They draft legislation. These state senators or whatever, they don't. When they talk about how they propose this different legislation, there are interest groups. All they do is write up legislation that's favorable to their industry, and they get these legislators to put this legislation forward, and that's basically how business is done. The regular person on the ground, we have no clue as to what's happening. So, but I'll leave it at that. And just say that we need to get more. I've even made an effort to get more involved. I recently have gotten involved in understanding and learning more about what's happening with my local police department here. So I've been going to some community forums. I've been asking questions. I've been meeting people. So so I think we all need to start somewhere with that. And great show. I'll leave it at that.
Hotep.
Hotep and out.
All right, guys, appreciate you taking the time out to listen to this show today. Please join us again next week at the same time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we bring you another live show. As always, don't forget to check out our Facebook page, YouTube channel. You can get all the information from our website at www.realtalkradio.com. And again, we thank all the callers, everybody in the chat room. We love you guys. We will see you next week. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Real Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.forrealtalkradio.com for updates on all of our social media platforms, including our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Feel free to send us any of your comments, questions, or criticisms. If this show or any of our past shows have helped you in any way, please feel free to share it with your friends and family. See you next week.